I really enjoyed my experience at the film festival. The movie I chose to review was Prison Dogs. Prison Dogs is a movie about prisoners teaching puppies to be service dogs for war veterans with PTSD. The movie was really amazing, and I'm so glad I got the opportunity to talk to the director and learn more about the movie.
When Gloria said, "Oh, I'm going to match you with Murphy, and you're going to be, you're going to be bonded," and I was like, "By Wednesday?" This was Sunday, and I'm like, "How does this happen?" She's like, "No, it's going to take you 6 months," and it truly takes you 6 months to learn the dog, and the dog learns you, and meanwhile you're trying to deal with PTSD and trying not to freak out in public with this dog. So it is not an easy process. It's not easy when you're trying to keep it all in your head, because you have 90 commands. And as you can see from the movie, I'm like, down, off, what the heck? Do it, just do it. And it gets overwhelming, and then you're like, they give you this little flip book, and I'm like, my husband's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I can't remember the damn command." Now my whole family knows them. My family's like, "Mom." But it's a process, and it takes time to get used to a dog waking up in the middle of the night from a nightmare. I mean, that is a process. And you've got to be prepared for that. And it's hard to incorporate a dog into your life when you got to tell people. They're like, "You've got a service dog." Well, yeah, it's hard. It's very hard. They're doing great.
The men are doing great.
They are doing really well. They're really happy,
And they're all out now.
They're all out.
In case,
yeah.
You didn't know.
They
Except
are
for
all
Shannon.
out.
Forgive me.
Yeah,
Shannon's
Shannon's not out.
But the rest
But
of them
everyone
are.
else is out.
So there is a vetting process for the prisoners. They can apply essentially. And they are vetted, and they have to be carefully vetted because obviously they're entrusted with a life, like something that's like a newborn. So they cannot have any sort of sexual misconduct, issues. They cannot have anger management issues. They have to have displayed good behavior for a certain amount of time in the prison. So they, again, the organization has to feel that the dogs will be safe with them. So that's.
And they have to have a long bid.
Yeah, and this is also a point. Interestingly,
they have to have a long bid.
They have to have a long bid because they have to be able to complete the training. So I started out, my partner and my co-producer and co-director, Perry Peltz, and I started out wanting to make a film about recidivism, the rate of recidivism in the country, which is incredibly high. And as we were looking through, we were doing research in prisons to try to figure out which prisons we could get access to, and we were planning to follow a group of men or women who were just released from prison to see what their journey would be like. And the Fishkill prison was one of them, and we found out about a program at the prison, Puppies Behind Bars, and when we found out what they were doing in the prison, we thought that was an incredible story. It ended up being sort of a hopeful story at a time when people were really, the desire to hear stories about the failure of the prison system felt like it was kind of at an all-time low, and we felt like we needed a different angle into the subject matter, a different way to show people how we could impact change. And so, we also the idea of this story was incredible. I mean, they included veterans like Tracy. It included, the men, the incarcerated men, and then there was the bonus of the dogs, who were so, again, as a conduit really for this relationship that would be built between the veterans and the incarcerated, and it was a way to talk about PTSD. It just felt like a really rich story for a lot of social justice issues.
I'm not really sure. I hope that doesn't come for a while. She's only 5, but I'm not sure. I don't know that I would want to transition to another dog, but I don't know how I would cope without Murphy. So I think I'm going to have to just kind of see how things are at that point. But hopefully that's many years down the road.
So Gloria Gilbert-Stoga is the woman who started this program, Puppies Behind Bars. She's featured in the film. She is the very feisty, kind of loving but also terrifying woman who runs the program. And you know, she was inspired. I think she had seen it in happening elsewhere, and she thought that it was something that she would be good at. She also was really inspired by, basically, as she said and says in the film, she was watching the events, the bombings in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the war that was occurring day after day after day, the war on terror, and she felt that she needed to contribute in some way and be helpful. And she felt that raising service dogs was the best way to do it. So it was a process to get permission from the prison, because the prison system obviously is very rigid. And we filmed in the prison for almost 3 years. And obviously there was a whole process by which, getting the equipment into the prison every time. We had to have an exact list of every single piece of equipment we were bringing to the prison, down to batteries. And then we had to list what we were bringing in for lunch, and like sandwiches. We had to list if we had a drink or a bottle of water. And getting it through security and out of security was a big deal. We had to ask permission like a month in advance every time before we would go in. And we were only allowed to shoot in certain areas. We could only film within the classrooms, within the men's sleeping quarters, where they lived and raised the puppies, and certain areas on the ground. If we were seen shooting anything else, we could get kicked out. So it was definitely trying. And once we obviously transitioned to filming the veterans, like Tracy, they were very generous. They let us into their homes and their lives. But the prison itself, they're very strict.